Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear subscribers, I'd like to focus on the question whether Russia is really a paper tiger. As we all know, a few days ago, President Trump referred to Russia as a paper tiger, and he encouraged President Zelensky to go ahead and take over all of the territories lost to Russia in Donbass over the last 3 years. To remind you, those who are new to this channel, the lands in Donbass are populated by the Russians. These provinces seceded from Ukraine at the time of the coup d'etat in 2014, and since then they were trying to preserve their autonomous status. For 8 years, Putin helped them but did not recognize them, trying to arrange a compromise decision that they remain autonomous provinces inside Ukraine, to which there was a constant violation and bombardment of Donetsk by the Ukrainian forces until finally in January 2022, the Ukrainians decided to take it over and the Russians defended them, which is usually called as a Russian aggression against Ukraine, which in fact was not an act of aggression, but an act of defense of Donbass against another attempt of Ukraine to take it over. But be it as it may, what I'd like to focus today is on the fact-finding mission. And what I did is I opened up official U.S. sources, and that is called Intelligence Community Assessment. Annual Threat Assessment, ATA. So what I'm going to do is give you a very specific analysis by the U.S. intelligence of Russian armed forces and their capabilities. Moreover, what I also did, I checked some of the Russian forces, and at certain points there is a difference between what the Americans say the Russians have and what they themselves say they do have. And in that sense, I will give you two counts as to what the Americans say and what the Russians say. But before we begin, what's most important is that this is the material that President Trump must have read. Now, maybe he refused to read it. We don't know. Maybe he refused to rely on official U.S. intelligence sources because he doesn't believe them, because he thinks that CIA has a fifth column, as he said a few times back. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he believes General Kellogg, who has his information from Zelensky and from his Ukrainian sources. We don't know what he knows, but we know what he's supposed to know because this is the data from the U.S. intelligence. And so this is what it says. And I quote, based on the most recent public available reports as of September 2025, the IC, which means intelligence community, portrays Russia's military as, quote, resilient and formidable in a prolonged conflict. March 2025 Annual Threat Assessment, ATA, of the U.S. intelligence community. Now, it continues that Russia, quote, seized an upper hand in Ukraine with gradual erosion of Kiev's position on the battlefield, regardless of Western aid efforts. So this is their conclusion. Now, specifically, when we discuss Russian ground forces, the U.S. intelligence says that Russia has 1.5 million active duty troops. Now, the Russian generals, from the sources that I have checked, say that right now Russia has 2.2 million armed forces. Of those, 700,000 are engaged in Ukraine, and the rest of them are in various military districts. The biggest of them is the ones in the northwest, facing the northern flank of NATO. Now, the most important one in terms of the comparison is the one that counts missiles and drones. As we have all specialists have now concluded that the drones have changed the warfare just as much as a machine gun changed the warfare during World War I. Essentially, what it means is that the drones create what the Ukrainians themselves say a zone of 20 or so kilometers in width, which is a kill zone, which means anything that moves, machines or people or vehicles, is destroyed immediately. So the only way in these conditions to advance is to have an overwhelming superiority in drones and total control over the skies, which means it's missiles and air force and air defense systems. So this is where the most important characteristics come into play. Now, according to, again, the American intelligence sources, Russia has, in terms of strategic forces, they're regulated by the treaties and so forth, and they're nuclear, and most likely, we hope, they're not going to be used. So counting those is not very helpful. But even in the area of strategic nuclear missiles, Russia has a slight advantage. But again, that probably wouldn't matter that much. Now, according to these sources, Russia hypersonic missile program includes Kinzhal, Tsirkon, Oreshnik, and Avangard, and they are described in this report in great details. For example, the Iskander missile, there's 700 of them. And the Tsirkon is the one that is used for ships and submarines. Avangard is a strategic long-range ballistic missile that used to carry nuclear-powered explosives. And the most interesting is the new one, which is called Oreshnik. Oreshnik has a range of 5,000 kilometers, and there are nobody knows how many have been produced, but they've been put into serial production in the last few months. Now, here's the conclusion of the report concerning the missiles. Total hypersonic output. Russia defense industry base prioritizes high-precision missiles with hypersonic comprising 10 to 20% of the 6,000 unit in 2025. And it says that future prospect by 2035, 1,000 hypersonic missiles are expected. But in the near term, a lot is used up in the military operations in Ukraine, specifically Kinzhal, which is 5 March missile. By comparison, Oreshnik is 10 March, which means that it's 10 times faster. Now, the Tsirkon, as I mentioned before, is used in submarines, and Avangard is in silos. This is long-range missile. Now, let me just say a few words about the comparison of U.S. and Russia in the high seas. That is U.S. fleet. Now, the United States, of course, prides itself on having the best and the most powerful fleet in the world, and indeed they are. But here is some comparison with the Russian forces. Now, U.S. fleet totals approximately 70 submarines, all nuclear-powered, with superior quieting technology and sensor suites that give it an edge in modern sea superiority. Russia has 64 submarines, blending nuclear and diesel driven. But here's the most important base of comparison. This is what the American report says. Russia has Yasin M class submarine, which, I quote, rivals U.S. boats in some metrics like missile load in ballistic missiles. So Ohio class is 14, and 14, the number, there's 14 of them. And Russia has 14 also, of which 8 is Borei class, 6 Delta IV class. And here I quote, Russia's defense industrial base has prioritized wartime scaling for both drones and artillery, enabling it to outperform NATO in sheer volume. So this is their comparison. The paper tiger, actually, to translate it in normal English, has more drones and more capability of missile attack than United States plus all of NATO together, combined. Okay, so specifically, Russia's annual production of artillery shells, according to the U.S. intelligence sources, is 4-4.5 million, which mean, and NATO, they say, is 2 million, which is vastly exaggerated. This is on paper only. NATO has not yet launched anything comparable to artillery shell production, and this is vastly exaggerated. The figures that are quoted in Europe today is that Russia produces 3 times more than the entire US and NATO combined in terms of artillery shells. Now, the metrics that matters most is drones, and American assessment is that Russia produces 2.5 million a year, which means 200 a day. And as we know from the reports coming daily, Russia uses in its attacks from 500 to 800, some days 1,000 drones a day in their attacks on Ukrainian targets. Now, tanks. Now, some people say tanks are outdated because they could be blown up because of the drones, etc. That is partly true, and it was so in the early stages of the Russia-Ukraine war in 22-23, when in fact a lot of Russian tanks were hit by Ukrainian-made drones. However, this is changing because Russia's use of tanks have changed, and now they have a cover specifically designed as a defense against the drones, and they are used in a different capacity as a cover for the advancing small groups of men. And in any case, the number of tanks does matter at all. Now, according to the American report I'm citing, they claim that Russia has from 2,000 to 3,000 T-70, T-80, and T-90 tanks. Now, this is not true. I checked other Western sources, and I also checked with the Russian sources. Russia has 12,000 available tanks now, today. And the production is from 1.5 to 2,000 per year, according to American sources. So this is definitely not the case. Now, in terms of the vehicles for infantry, according to American sources, it's 30,000 BTRs and 3,000 production a year. So now they also say in this report a few not very kind words about NATO European partners, which is, and I quote, low readiness. UK tank fleet is 150. That's it, 150 operational. And the ammunition storage, 160,000 shells a month, and needed 1 million a quarter. So way, way behind. Now, all of European NATO has 6,000 available tanks. And of course, Russia, as we have just said, alone, not counting Belarus and some other Russian allies, it has 12,000. Then what I also did is I asked I asked American sources, I studied American sources, trying to do the comparison of some of the key armaments. And one of those is the comparison of S-400 air defense system from Russia and Patriot system from the United States. Now, as we all know, Trump likes to boast that this is the best, that the Patriots are the best, that the whole world wants to buy them and they ran out of them and don't even have enough to give to the Ukrainians. And there's a line from all these countries who want to buy Patriot missiles. So let me just give you American, let me emphasize, this is American data, not the Russian one. So the comparison of S-400 anti-air defense system with Patriot. Maximum range, S-400, 400 kilometers. Patriot, 160, 180 kilometers. The notes, S-400 superior in long range. That's not my comment, that's theirs. Maximum altitude, from 30 to 185 kilometers, S-400, 24 kilometers for Patriot. Missile types, 4 to 8 different types, short range and medium and long range for S-400, and primarily PAC-3 hit-to-kill model for the Patriots. Simultaneous engagements of S-400 tracks 160 targets, engage 72 to 80 simultaneously. The Patriots 100 to 125 targets, engage 9 to 36 simultaneously. And this is the official conclusion of American intelligence. S-400 handles higher salvos better. That's their term. Radar detection, S-400, 600 kilometers, Patriot, 150 kilometers. Anti-ballistic capability, up to 60 kilometers, March, the terminal, only at the terminal phase, and it can intercept up to March 5, which means it cannot intercept Oreshnik. Cost, S-400, 500 million, Patriot 1.2 billion, including support, which means, of course, that S-400 is superior. This is just one example, and I cannot take too much time of you. Just to add that Russians have S-500, which is even higher and better, and can even do the satellite kill projects. Now, I also have a similar comparison of F-35 and Su-57. And for the lack of time, I cannot read to you all the characteristics, but I remember in one of my videos, I told someone, I asserted that Su-57 is superior, and some of the comments that I received were, disagreed. They said S-35 is superior. No, according to the comparison I just read, Su-57 is superior in all but stealth, in the armaments, in the quality, in the maneuverability, in price, in the number of tasks, etc., than F-35. Now, the conclusion that can be made by this comparison is that, according to American intelligence, certainly Russia is not a paper tiger. One could say more. Russia can take on US and NATO in Europe forces in a conventional war and win. It has superior missile technology, drones technology, anti-aircraft technology, air defense technology, and its offensive capability, and its tanks and motor vehicles, and most importantly, experience that cannot be matched in a war with Ukraine. So, if the Europeans have any desire to get into the war with Russia, provoked by all these incidents that suspiciously got frequent in the last few days, they better think twice, because these figures by American intelligence show that Russia is anything but a paper tiger. And in fact, it accelerated its offensive in Ukraine, and we shall see some of the decisive battles in the next several months. Thank you. Please subscribe to my channel. Please say likes. Please write your comments. I like responding to those, as you know. And of course, read my book, From Lenin to Putin. Thank you. Bye-bye.